Let's talk about that. We now have 60-year-old Kamala Harris and we have 78-year-old Donald Trump. It is my view that not enough attention has been paid for a long time to what Donald Trump is experiencing, whatever it is. And I say that as a layperson and not an expert. I recently reviewed video of Donald Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024. And although I don't necessarily have the clinical vocabulary to describe everything I'm observing,
You don't have any vocabulary, David the Pakman. You really don't.
Observing something extraordinarily notable here. So as you now, what are the most precise terms with which you can describe what you're now observing in Trump?
Well, there's a number of things that are...
Before this quack doctor, and he's not an MD, he's a psychologist. He's not even a psychiatrist, folks. He's a hack from the Ivy League. And just because he has a degree from Cornell or he teaches there, I would just like to ask David the Pakman one thing. Where was his assessment of the cognitive decline of Joe Biden? I mean, if you're going to do things, David the Pakman, this is what I keep telling you folks, that David the Pakman lies about everything. This guy is a lying machine. Lies of omission. Definitely he's not even-handed. Because if he was, he would be asking this hack, psychologist, psychoanalyst. And we're going to talk about this guy too, folks. You know, he has a podcast. It's called The Shrinking Trump or something like that. Some stupid-ass podcast where he and some other hack psychoanalysts talk about Trump's dementia. Where was their podcast on the shrinking Biden, the shrinking brain of Biden? These are just two liberal, leftist, democratic hacks who happen to be tenured at an Ivy League institution. Wow, whoopee-doo. But just listen, folks. Listen to how David the Pakman asks the questions as if he's so concerned about the health and the fitness, the mental capabilities of Donald Trump, where he absolutely failed to ask those same goddamn questions about Joe Biden. That's all you have to know about David the Pakman. Let's see what this hack has to say anyways. I'm quite interested in hearing hack a story.
Noticeable, and I'm so glad you went back and looked at those.
Oh, he's so glad.
Not only does he look different in 2024, but I would argue he looks different than he looked in July.
Yes.
I'm seeing some real decline. And unfortunately, with these kinds of disease processes, they often speed up. But before...
Like the ones with Joe Biden. But of course, you never talked about that, did you, Hackster?
Before I even comment on those, let me just state at the outset that his bravado, his confidence, his ability to connect to his audience and to feed off of the adulation is still very much intact.
Yes.
No shit, Sherlock. Where'd you come up with that diagnosis?
And if he's interviewed by a very friendly room, you know, the Fox and Friends Saturday team, for example, who interviewed him last June and believed all of the myths about Trump, he can come across fairly coherent. He still wanders, but...
It's called storytelling, you moron! You know, I'm going to make a diagnosis here. I'm a doctor too. I'm not a clinical psychiatrist. I'm not a clinical psychologist. But I can make a diagnosis too. You know, Professor, I think you're just retarded. How's that? Sweet, simple, to the effing point. You are just retarded. And I haven't even seen you 4 or 8 years ago, but I can guarantee that not only are you retarded now, you're probably more retarded than you were 6 to 8 years ago. All right? I just, because if you can be out there making these diagnoses, making these assumptions, putting out your opinions, and no doctor in his right mind, a psychiatrist, psychologist, who really cares about his freaking reputation would ever, ever, ever go on TV and start to talk about the mental declines of the President of the United States unless he could back it up with some type of truth. There's no truth going on here. You could see it in the truth in Joe Biden. But guess what? David the Pakman, along with his acolytes, were hiding the truth from the American people every time. I can't go over every one of David the Pakman shows, but I think I could be a pretty good betting man to say that I don't know if he brought up any cognitive issues of Joe Biden in 2019 or 20 or 21 or 22 or 23. Maybe he talked about a few of them, but I can guarantee you probably that he always obfuscated a little bit or lied with the lies of omission. Let's go on with this hack anyways.
But if he's comfortable and it's during the day and there's adoring people, that bravado and that confidence persists.
Yes.
What has been slipping, however, is when he is pressed to answer complicated questions, he cannot answer them.
Right.
Oh, you mean like the ones that he was at the economics interview or the discussion in Chicago or Detroit, right? Where he literally told that reporter, give him a couple of the middle fingers. You know what I'm talking about? And he had the best of him. What are you talking about?
Right.
He will digress. He will stonewall. He will tread water. But he's
Oh, you mean like other politicians?
really avoiding anyone asking him difficult questions, as we saw at the Detroit Economic Club, and we also saw at the New York Club. So specifically,
He didn't ask any questions. He didn't push back. He was telling the guy that the guy didn't know an effing thing. The guy didn't know nothing about tariffs. Didn't know nothing about economics. The guy thought he was. You know why? Because he's probably from some Ivy League, hoity-poity school, thinks he knows everything, never been in the real world. The guy who was asking Donald Trump the questions, but an elitist who thinks he knows every goddamn thing. But Trump put him in his place. He absolutely did. You don't like that fact, but no, Trump is dementiated now.
what I'm seeing is this. First of all, there's an increase in the phonemic paraphasias. That is his inability to finish certain words when he begins them. And like many people who struggle with early signs of dementia.
Oh, you mean like when you made this diagnosis about Joe Biden, right?
He will try to cover it up by rushing to another word.
Yes.
So I've seen that increasing. Well,
Did you see that increasing in Joe Biden, though?
we're also seeing, I think, is a kind of simplifying of his sentences. So he gums together these ideas and says them. And some of them we notice, like the Hannibal Lecter thing. And then when he hears the criticisms, he says that they're part of his genius.
So let's talk about that a little. Before we get, I want to talk about that because this is a bigger topic, and I mentioned this to you also before we started. One of the things I'm noticing is that Donald Trump is clearly aware of what's being said about his cognition, and he started to develop some tools to react to that. One of the tools is that he regularly says Kamala Harris needs a cognitive test. Something's wrong with her brain. She's low IQ, etc. Anybody who honestly
That is so true. She's a retard, David. How many times do we have to tell you? Not only is Kamala Harris retarded, she's stupid. She's a moron. These are my clinical diagnoses that I'm making as a medical doctor. If he can make my medical diagnoses as a psychoanalyst, not a psychiatrist, as a psychologist, then I certainly have the equipment and the wherewithal to make my diagnoses on Kamala Harris. And I just did.
Evaluates her, knows that this is very much not the case. It's so obvious that this isn't the case, but it's interesting that as the focus has shifted to Trump's brain, he starts talking about Kamala Harris. The other thing I've noticed is the so-called weave. And I think this is what you're pointing to, which is recognizing that he often doesn't answer the question or can't or doesn't want to or ends up on tangential topics. He has couched this as he has an incredible linguistic and communication ability to weave together seemingly unrelated topics and always come back to the original question.
Yes, he absolutely does, David. It's called storytelling. God, David the Pakman, are you a moron too? You really, really must be. And I've been trying to find out. I've been, emailing, but you've been ducking and covering because you won't have me on your show. You don't want to, debate with me because I will wipe the floor with you in a debate. It won't even be close. I've been daring you. Hey, people out there that love David the Pakman, all you, lemmings that are following him off the cliff, all I ask you is to say, are you getting both sides of the story? Are you really? If you can say you truly are, okay, fine. I just don't think so. There are lies of omission. Let David the Pakman know that the Dr. Nasser wants to debate him anywhere, any place, anytime. But he's too scared to debate me. But he will bring on these hacks to talk about the cognitive decline of President Trump when he never brought these jokers on his show to talk about the absolute cognitive decline of Joe Biden. To me, that's not fair. That's not balanced. I don't think that is.
Once again, anyone who looks at his speeches knows that that's not what's happening. But talk about that. It is in a sense a protective shield that he has created.
Yes, he rationalizes his deficits by proclaiming either the other person has those deficits, not he, and also he will also attribute it to brilliance.
Yes.
So I remember it was
because you guys lack his brilliance.
I think it was in June that he first started talking about how brilliant he was with the we. And he was running three stories together. It was actually about Macron saying that he would put a tariff on things and Trump threatening, one of those Sir stories.
Yes.
And he kept returning to it, but not finishing it. So then he was aware of that and said, I'm just being brilliant.
So now this guy with the degree, he's basically saying, because you're telling a story and you don't always finish it, and you sort of go from one subject to another subject, your brain's falling apart. You've got Parkinson's. You're losing it. You're dementiated. That's the new... This is what these guys have now, folks. This is what's going to start on day one of the presidency. When are we going to invoke the 25th Amendment? When are we going to do that? Trump said he slurred a word. He forgot something. Oh, he's talking a little different. Oh, he's weaving again. Guess what? It's Joe Biden this time because that blew up so big in their faces that now they're saying, you know what? We can take that and we can throw it on Trump and tarnish him with that. Let's start right now. And that's all David the Pakman is doing right now because they can't talk about the election. They can't talk about the polls. They can't talk about what's happening in terms of Trump just absolutely crushing it everywhere. So what does David the Pac-Man do to obfuscate, to hide? It's just like the typical liberal tactic. When you don't have anything to talk about and you can't talk about the truth, well, the first thing is you lie, and then you reach into your political card deck and you start throwing out the letters. Racist, bigot, insurrectionist, homophobe, xenophobe, thatophobe. You know what I'm talking about.
That weave is becoming more and more disorganized. So now when it's happening, he actually never gets back to where he was. And it's very disturbing to see. And as far as his projecting onto Kamala Harris his own deficits, there's something that John Heilman said that I always remember, which is everything Trump says is confession or projection.
Right. And
this is an example of it.
No, that's what you guys do. That's what you do, David the Pac-Man. That's what you do, you leftists. That's what you do. That's what... Maybe, you know what? Hey, I just slurred something. Maybe this hack doctor, not a real doctor, just plays one on David the Pac-Man show. Maybe I just slurred those words, so maybe I'm getting a little senile dementiated. But they're talking about projection? That Trump is projecting? Are you effing kidding me? Trump is projecting? You Democrats project all the effing time. That's all you guys do, David the Pac-Man. That's a playbook. Modus operandi of the Democrats. Projection. Everything that you do, your entire DNA is made up of projection. I'm going to blow a freaking gasket over here.
And I guess I want to say one more thing, which is not only does Trump suffer from a very severe personality disorder, malignant narcissism with sociopathic features.
Oh my God.
He's also, of course, having this cognitive decline. I think Kamala Harris has shown herself to be
an idiot,
psychologically very healthy.
How can you notice that from what you see on TV or videos?
Well, it's kind of fascinating. I don't know if you watched the town hall with Anderson Cooper.
Yes.
But
that
Cooper
disaster.
was pushing her on a couple things. First of all,
he was pushing her to answer the goddamn questions, Doc. And that's a doc, not as in an MD. That's a doc as in just an average old professor. He was pushing her to answer questions, but she doesn't have the brain power, which is why I called her an idiot, which is why I said she's retarded, which is why I said she's a moron. She can't answer the simple questions. Hey, Vice President Kamala Harris, why do you want to be president of the United States? Well, I was born in a middle-class family, and we had a lawn. And you know, everybody in our community, they love lawns. And they loved our lawns, and we were a community of lawn lovers. No, that's what you would basically say is a person that is so unbelievably smart and intelligent, educated. And then the next day you ask her the same question and you get the same repetitive answer.
I heard you called your minister when you heard from President Biden that he was dropping out. Can you tell us about that call? And when Harris is asked to talk about something personal,
she lies.
See her wait a little bit
because she's thinking of
a
lie.
She tells it, and her face kind of lights up
because she knows she's lying.
A vulnerability and a pleasure in speaking about it, and she did.
I'm almost going to have to throw up here, folks.
Did that in talking about her faith and about her church.
She has no faith.
When a woman asked her a question, and Cooper said that this woman's husband had died a year earlier, Cooper went back and said to her, "What about your grieving? I know you lost your mother some time ago." And Harris began to talk about grief in a very personal way. That when you're grieving someone, you're
How else would you talk about grief? You, of course, are going to talk about it in a personal way. Did you ever hear Trump talk about his father and his mother? No, you didn't. Because you guys have such Trump derangement syndrome, it's not even freaking funny. You don't even hide it anymore.
always aware of the lack of their being gone, but there's an effort to remember them in the way that they wish to be remembered. And then she went on to say that it's very important for us to allow people to grieve in the way they're going to grieve. And it was
Wow, that was so effing profound. Wow, Professor. Everybody should be allowed to grieve in the way they would like to grieve. It's a good thing that Kamala Harris is running for president, because we would never have known that. But that is what you're getting out of Kamala's answer. You know, Doc, I thought you'd have more.
so serious and it was so honest. And that ability to talk about difficult things, personal feelings, to be able to talk about it honestly and fluidly is one sign of psychological health.
The other thing that's there that might be relevant is Trump struggles to talk about abstract concepts and ideas is one thing I notice. Where with Trump, it's, I said this to Mexico, and then, I showed Abdul a picture of his house, and it's a sequential linear narrative about facts. Whereas what you're talking about with Kamala Harris.
Whereas with Kamala Harris, it's a sequential factoring of effing lies. So where Trump basically is telling the truth and just basically putting it right there, because he talks like normal people. You don't understand that, David the Pakman. You just don't. But lie upon lie upon lie. Every time that Kamala Harris opens up her mouth, besides for other reasons, but when she talks, she also speaketh with forketh tongueth.
Harris is the idea to talk about a concept in a way that is not relevant to a sequential story. Trump seems to suffer from sort of like concrete thinking is where he hits a limit. Is there some, I don't know if I'm expressing this articulately.
No, David, that's so insightful because
No, David, that's so insightful that somebody is not thinking linearly. Oh, wow, I can't wait to hear this hack basically stroke David's ego here.
you're right that when there's cognitive decline, there's the loss of the capacity to think abstractly. And Trump he uses formulas now. There's this Sir Story formula. Someone tells him he's going to do something costs too much. Trump threatens the person, like Abdul in the house, and then the person backs off.
Yep.
And then Trump has made himself into the hero in his story.
That's what we wanted a president to do, something like that, to fight back for us, Doc. What the hell else do you want him to do? That's why we want him. That's why people love him. That's why he works. That's why he can make deals. So when he's thinking this, that's not abstract. That's not abstract. Abstract thinking. He's a effing political strategic genius. What do you think he did with McDonald's? Do you think that was just concrete linear thinking, or do you think that was a little bit abstract? Who else would have thought of that? Oh, guess what else is abstract thinking there, Doc and David the Pakman? Geez, I wonder, I just would have wished to have been a fly on the effing wall when Trump said to his team, hey, when I get off the plane or whatever, what would it look like if I rolled up in a garbage truck with Make America Great Again on the side? I'm sure that a lot of people in that room were sitting there, a lot of brain power there besides Trump, political strategists that have got years and years of experience in Washington, D.C. and, pundits and whatever. And they're probably looking at Donald Trump and going, is he okay? Is Trump okay? What? You're going to go, what? A garbage truck? Come on. You can't have the President of the United States in a garbage truck. Well, if they were thinking that, then I think they should be fired. Because Trump came up with that. I would think he came. I don't know, but if he didn't, somebody else did. He took. And then you're telling me about the stories he's telling? When he said he put the vest on, he goes, I'm not wearing that vest. And then maybe he's making it up. That's what we do with stories. We make this shit up all the time. But he makes up the best shit stories that I've ever effing heard. I like his shit stories. They're fantastic. And when they told him, or he repeated the story, and he said, well, Mr. President, it makes you look thin. He just won himself 1,000 votes. Hundreds of thousands of votes with just that one story. But you guys are too goddamn stupid to recognize that. David the Pakman? Harry Segal? Because everybody looks at that and goes, yeah, when I put on a suit or I put on that dress, yeah, you know what? That makes me look thin because I don't want to look fat. He's relatable. He's not a lying sack of shit like Kamala Harris is. You guys don't understand that yet, but you will find that out on Election Day. Let's hear some more of what David the Pakman and the doc have to say.
Story. I don't, if you watched Harris's speech at the Ellipse the other night.
Yes.
There's this very beautiful part at the end that
I don't think commentators
talked about, which she said,
because it was irrelevant
expression, but she says,
it was such a great expression that this guy forgot it.
I am living the promise of America. I see the promise of America in all of you. Now that's a poetic, abstract idea that she was able to bring in to create a kind of crescendo at the end of her speech.
A crescendo.
And yes, it's written and it's on the teleprompter, but she works on her speeches.
She works on her speeches. Do you know how many people have left her staff? How many speechwriters have left her staff? Do you have any idea? 92% of her staffers have left her.
She's not just reading things.
No.
Last thing, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to affirm what you said, how different that is.
It is it's notably different. And this
so
sort of gets me
affirming.
to the last thing I wanted to ask you about.
Thank
which
God.
Is the linguistic versus the cognitive.
Oh,
we
boy.
reported earlier this week on a study that looked at non-teleprompter speaking, right? Because as you point out, the teleprompter, you're reading something, it's not necessarily reflective of vocabulary or spontaneous thought.
I can't wait to hear
But it
this.
evaluated Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris in debate speech over periods of time. And what it found was that Kamala Harris's, it looked at 7 different factors, including vocabulary, sentence structure, complexity, all these different things. Kamala Harris essentially unchanged. Joe Biden, yes, some decline. And Donald Trump, notably more decline. Linguistic.
God almighty, you just can't be saying this. I mean, people, if you're still listening to this David the Pakman bullshit, he just basically said, he basically just said, I heard it with my own ears, that this testing that was done has rated in terms of communicative skills. Kamala Harris is up here, Biden is here, and Trump is down here. You can't get any more propagandist-wise spewing this verbal diarrhea bullshit, then David the Pakman has just encapsulated in one line of just TDS thought.
Here's my question to you.
Yes, give him the question.
Is it plausible that one might have linguistic decline that does not correlate with cognitive decline, or are in most cases the two related? And I know my audience wrote to me and said, you know, David, there are examples where specific injuries or conditions can affect speech but not cognition, but they're rare. Usually these things.
Wow, your audience are a bunch of medical doctors writing in terms of case histories of people really asking that question. You're asking us to believe that that's what your listeners are doing, right? That's what they're asking. In those type of medical terms, that's what they're doing? Really?
Go hand in hand. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes!
Absolutely. Linguistic performance and behavior is key to looking at cognitive health. In fact,
would that have been something, Doc, that you should have pointed out with Joe Biden? Linguistically? But what did you guys tell us? And what did you tell us, David the Pakman, about Joe Biden? Good old Joe. He just talks that way. Skips a few words, forgets a few things, says some things that he shouldn't have said. That's just good old Joe. It's Uncle Joe. There's no dementia here. There's no cognitive decline. Oh, he's fallen off a bicycle? That's just normal. Everybody does that. He falls up going up the steps. Oh, you never fell down a stair of steps? You never fell going up the steps? Come on, that's just normal stuff that's going on. That's what we heard from you for 3.5 years. You guys were lying your asses off.
If you look at the IQ, right? The higher the IQ, the greater the person's capacity to think abstractly. So if
wow, then Donald Trump's IQ must be off the effing chart. His IQ must be off the effing chart because he has just thought abstractly in two of the greatest political strategic moves that have ever been done in the history of the United States of America in the political process. He just did a McDonald's thing that was absolutely brilliant. And then he took what the Democrats made a huge mistake when Biden called half the country garbage for supporting President Trump. And he thinks abstractly, and he comes up with a what? An unbelievable political strategical move and says, I'm going to come to a rally in an effing garbage truck. So his IQ, Doc, must be off the effing charts.
If you have, unfortunately, a low IQ, then you might be only able to think concretely. Like, this is this is this, this is good, this is bad. And
in other words, he just proved it. I said Kamala was a retard. Doc just proved it here, saying the same thing. Only think about this, only think about this. That is Kamala Harris in a freaking nutshell. And you could put her vice president candidate into that basket as well. Tim AWOL, AWOL Walls. IQ low. Can only think abstractly. Can only think about this. Can only think about this. Thank you, Doc. Finally, you came up with something, okay, that we can actually use.
What you're seeing with Trump off teleprompter, that's exactly right. He still has the bravado and the energy. In fact, he has more energy when he goes off the teleprompter, but his language gets much more simple. And that's what really disturbs me. Last time I was on, you asked me, would I be saying this about a Democrat, even though I do think Trump is a terrible danger to the world and to our democracy. But if Kamala Harris were showing these signs, I'd be saying the same thing.
That is such effing bullshit. God, this guy's another liar too, just like David the Pakman. He's actually asking you folks to believe that if Kamala Harris was shown... This guy has a podcast with another hack psychoanalyst. I forget his name. It's not important. He's an idiot too. They have a podcast. I think it's called Shrinking Trump or something about Trump. But they didn't have that podcast when Joe Biden was there. But he's actually sitting here with a straight face and telling us that if this were happening to a Democrat, he would be the first person to raise up his hand and say exactly the same thing. You know, in the movie Animal House, when they all went, bullshit, bullshit. Yeah, I call bullshit on you, Doc. I call bullshit on you.
We have been speaking here with Harry Segal, clinical psychologist,
hack,
senior lecturer in the psychology department at Cornell University.
Hack.
Really appreciate your insights today and over the last period of time, and we will all be watching next week.
We will. Thanks so much.
Thanks for your lies, Doc. We will bring you back to book more lies, more omission of lies, more stuff that you can, Trump derangement syndrome. We'll bring you back to do all of that. Unbelievable. I just want to show you guys now some of the stuff that's out there on the internet that Harry Segal and his hack partner are talking about. Folks, go to it yourself and see it. But I'm going to show you some of that right now. So the first thing I'm going to show you here is, it says Harry Segal, this is his LinkedIn. It goes, I teach clinically related courses to Cornell undergraduates. Of course. He supervises a field placement program, and he advises students applying to doctoral programs. That's all this guy does. Let's take a look at some other stuff from this guy. So here we have it, folks. Let's see here. There we are. 2 psychologists have launched a podcast about Trump's mental state. They claim the former president has rapid mental deterioration. Dr. Harry Segal, hack, and Dr. John Gartner, double hack, believe Trump will only get worse. Okay? These pairs of professional psychologists, and I put that into quotes, are warning that despite Americans believing Joe Biden is more unfit to be president, Donald Trump's cognitive decline is getting worse. Now, what I would like to ask John and Harry is, where the hell were you guys when all of this was absolutely front and center with Joe Biden at that time? And you guys, I didn't see a podcast there talking about how Biden was going to get only worse. Why did you guys come out of your rock and under that snake hole that you guys crawled out of only when it was shown and proven on national TV, because you couldn't hide it anymore? And now you guys are grifting. And we're to believe that we should be listening to 2 hacksters and hucksters like you, because you have the wherewithal and the temerity to tell us that Donald Trump is in mental severe decline more than Joe Biden? No wonder you guys are effing losing. Look what they call it. It's a podcast, called Shrinking Trump. Why? They dissect the reasons for Donald Trump's rapid mental deterioration. Gartner goes even so far as to accuse Trump, who has consistently denied any cognitive impairment, while suggesting Biden doesn't know where he is of having dementia. He says, I always say to people, this is the hackster John, look at Donald Trump right now, because that's the best Donald Trump you're ever going to see. Because dementia is a deteriorating illness, and his rate of deterioration is accelerating. I'm sorry, folks. I don't want to go this long on this podcast here, but these guys are absolutely pissing me off. And they should be pissing you guys off too. And I hope you guys watch. I hope you share this with other people that feel just like me. Because David the Pakman, he just doesn't tell the effing truth at all. It's all one-sided. He never balances it out. These are the two guys right here. John Gardner and Harry Segal. But they've been sounding their opinion on Trump's abilities, but they believe the media refuses to cover it. Are you effing kidding me? The media isn't covering these stories that you guys bring up that are all lies? The ones that they didn't cover were the ones that were happening to Joe Biden. Talk about projection. Amazing. Here's something. This guy is unbelievable. This hack doctor, and I use that. He's not a doctor. He's a psychoanalyst. I don't even think he's that. Don't even. He's saying, I don't know what it will take for the mainstream press to actually ask the question, is there something wrong with Trump's brain? Well, Doc, where the hell were you when you should have wondered, I don't know what it will take for the mainstream press to actually ask the question, is there something wrong with Biden's brain? Why wasn't that question answered, Doc? Why wasn't there a podcast about shrinking Biden? He says the disorder with Trump doesn't get better. It gets worse when there's less structure. He goes, the interaction between cognitive decline and the personality disorder, both of which are severe diagnosed for anybody, and this is for somebody who never should have been in power in the first place. He goes that this is such bullshit. He goes, Segal told Daily Mail that while Biden may just confuse some names and dates, it's more concerning that Trump actually confuses people. Now, Segal, this is the only truthful thing that this idiot moron retard has said. He clarifies that he has not treated Trump as a patient, but said the ex-president's verbal blunders are examples of phonemic paraphasia and the swapping of words for others that sound similar, which can be a sign of early sign of dementia. Oh, you didn't put that diagnosis to Biden during 3.5, 4 years ago, did you? Did you? If this wasn't so effing stupid, it would be funny. Take a look at this picture, folks. This is the picture of somebody who's, I'm going to use my word. This is a picture of somebody senile dementiated. He's senile dementiated, Trump. But this guy is perfectly okay. This is what David the Pakman wants you to think, that this guy's perfectly fine, capable of running the country and doing it for the last 3.5 years. Nothing going on here. But this guy, oh, he's in the throes of dementia. Now he says there's these two experts say that Biden, I can't even, it's so stupid to read. It's such bullshit. It's hard to read this. The experts, they say that Biden usually catches and corrects his mishaps, like when he said inflation was tied to a war in Iraq, but quickly clarified, excuse me, the war in Ukraine. There have been, however, multiple occasions when he has not caught his blunders, like when he misidentified Laken Riley, a student, allegedly, she was killed. What the hell does allegedly mean? And murdered by an illegal alien, an undocumented immigrant. It was an illegal alien that killed Laken Riley. There, oh, I mispronounced it too. I guess I must be dementiated as well. And these same two hacks have previously told DailyMail.com that the president should take dementia tests because of his pattern of confusions. In a damning report by the special counsel that called him a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. The tale of two brains. Biden's brain is aging. This is what these guys want you to believe, folks. That Biden's brain is aging. It's not dementing. But that Trump's brain is dementing. It's not aging. That's what David the Pakman and his acolytes and these two hacks that say, oh, they're doctors, but they're not. They've got PhDs from Ivy League schools that are all leftists, and they're trying to tell you that Biden's brain is just aging. It's not dementing. But Trump's brain is dementing, but it's not aging. At least the American people, they're not retards here. They know the difference. They know the bullshit that you guys are peddling. I mean, it's unbelievable. And here's a poll. 62% concerned. Only 34% for President Trump. And all 100% of that are probably Democrats. Well, folks, listen. That's all I got for today. But I'm putting it out there too. I am basically saying that I want David the Pakman. I want you for a debate. But you're too goddamn scared to debate me. So anybody out there, contact David the Pakman and tell him that a real doctor is ready to debate you, David. Anywhere, any place, anytime. There. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. I feel much better, much calmer, much more relaxed. Really appreciate all you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasser. If you haven't done anything yet, we hope you subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. Maybe I'm getting demented and my brain is aging. Who knows? Let me know if you think that's true in the comments below. Share this with everyone, folks. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. God damn it, you know you're right. When you're left, you're just effing wrong. Until next time, folks, y'all take care and stay safe.